Elise's grandmother died. She expected to inherit the old house in Sleepy Hollow, maybe a bit of money, perhaps some dusty jewelry. What she didn't expect was the glass display case of antique dolls that arrived at her Brooklyn apartment in the back of a creaky moving truck. She stared at the dozen of them, faded lace dresses, cracked porcelain skin, tiny mouths that seemed perpetually snaring. Her grandmother used to call them her ladies, and as a child, Elise hated them. She tried to give them away. No takers. Then she tried to throw them out. But every morning, they were back in the display case, sitting pretty. 12 dolls. But on the third morning, Elise counted 11. She frowned, chalked it up to miscounting. But then she got a call. Her ex-boyfriend, Caleb, had fallen off a ladder at his job site, snapped his neck instantly. She hadn't seen him in 2 years, hadn't thought of him in nearly as long. Still, it rattled her. That night, she double-checked the dolls. 11. She took a picture with her phone. The next morning, 10. Her best friend, Priya, was hit by a drunk driver crossing Flatbush Avenue. Died on the scene. Elise threw up in the sink. She pulled up the photo. Sure enough, 11 dolls yesterday, now 10. She started to make a list of the people she feared might be next. Her stomach sank when she realized each victim had some dark connection to her past. People who had wronged her, or whom she had wronged. The dolls were enacting a revenge list. But whose list? By the 7th doll, Elise locked the case and taped every edge shut. She even tried burning one, but it simply reappeared the next morning, sitting primly, untouched, back in the case. She reached out to her cousin Mina, the only other person alive who had known her grandmother well. Mina refused to talk over the phone. They met in a crowded cafe. Elise noticed Mina's eyes darting around the room constantly. I told her not to do it, Mina whispered. Your grandmother made a pact years ago with something old, something that lives inside those dolls. What kind of pact? Elise hissed. She called it balance. For every injustice done to her, the dolls would settle the score. But she couldn't choose who the list ended with. That's why she kept them, locked up in that case, sealed the curse with her own blood. Elise's mouth went dry. So why give them to me? She was dying, Elise. Dementia. She didn't remember what she'd done, or maybe she did. Maybe she thought you were the last one. Elise staggered home, heart racing. 7 dolls remained. She ripped apart her apartment, trying to find anything that could break the spell. Salt circles, sage, Latin incantations she read off the internet. Nothing worked. Each night, another doll vanished. Each morning, someone else died. An old teacher, a past landlord, a former co-worker who had bullied her. And then, only one doll remained. This one was different. Threadbare dress, one eye missing, the mouth curved up ever so slightly. Elise had never seen it before. She sat in front of it that night, staring. Is it me? She whispered. Am I the final name? The doll didn't move. At midnight, Elise jolted awake, unsure when she had dozed off. The case was empty. She screamed, spun around. There on the windowsill sat the final doll, its head tilted, smile widened. Elise turned on every light, grabbed a knife, and waited. The night passed and morning came. She was still alive. Her phone buzzed. News alert. A woman named Marilyn Graves had died in her sleep. Elise's mother. Elise hadn't spoken to her in 10 years, not since that night. The night she told her mother about the man who hurt her, the one her mother chose to protect instead. Tears burned Elise's eyes. One more death, one final act of justice. The case stayed empty, but the dolls, they weren't gone. Because every night, Elise hears the soft rustle of fabric in the dark. And sometimes, just before sleep takes her, she sees tiny shapes moving across the floor, waiting, watching for what comes next.